I should have tried to stop it. I should have done more. I should have done something. And I didn't. And at the end, you're ultimately responsible for what you've done, how you've participated.
Is your wife Debbie now expecting a child? A simple yes or no would do.
Can I say I'm not sure?
Really?
After years of silence, Debbie Rowe, Michael Jackson's ex-wife and the mother of 2 of his children, is finally opening up about the allegations and controversies that have cast shadows over his legacy. For decades, Michael Jackson's life has been a subject of fascination, suspicion, and endless media scrutiny. The world saw him as a music legend, a controversial figure, and a man surrounded by mystery. But Debbie knew a different side of him, a side that very few were privy to. As someone who stood beside him during some of his most challenging years, Debbie has a unique perspective on Michael's life, one that could either validate long-standing rumors or reveal truths that paint a very different picture of the King of Pop. So why now? Why after all these years is Debbie deciding to come forward with her story? Perhaps it's because at 65, she's ready to bring clarity to her role in Michael's life and finally address the swirling controversies that never seem to go away. Or maybe, after decades of silence, she feels the time has come to honor the man she once loved by revealing the struggles, the triumphs, and the complex reality of his life. Either way, her revelations have the potential to turn everything we thought we knew about Michael Jackson upside down. Debbie has hinted that her story will offer insights into the real Michael, the one the public never saw. She describes him as someone deeply affected by fame, a man who was constantly torn between his public image and his private self. According to Debbie, the Michael she knew was someone who tried to shield those he loved from the harsh realities of his life, while quietly battling his own demons behind closed doors. She suggested that her story will reveal the lengths Michael went to protect his family and his legacy, even as the media continued to fuel misunderstandings and sensationalize his every move. For years, Debbie has remained silent, allowing the rumors and speculations to unfold without her input. But now, by coming forward, she's ready to shed light on the life she shared with Michael, and in doing so, offer a perspective that only she can provide. As a woman who stood by him through both joy and turmoil, Debbie's voice is one of the few that can speak with true authority on who Michael Jackson really was behind the scenes. Her story promises to reveal the man beyond the headlines, the father, the friend, and the icon who was both haunted by his fame and determined to create a legacy that would outlive him. As Debbie finally speaks out, we are left wondering, will her words confirm the suspicions that have lingered in the public's mind for decades, or will they challenge us to see Michael in a new light? Her story isn't just another chapter in the legacy of Michael Jackson. It's a key piece of the puzzle that may forever alter our understanding of the man behind the music. Prepare yourself, because what Debbie Rowe has to say could reveal a side of Michael that no one expected, one that is complex, deeply human, and a reminder that legends too carry their own struggles and secrets. Debbie Rowe's relationship with Michael Jackson didn't start as a romance. It began in the most unexpected of ways, a friendship that developed while she was working as a nurse in Dr. Arnold Klein's dermatology office, where Michael was a regular patient. Over time, the two grew close, bonding over shared moments of vulnerability and trust. Michael, often guarded around others, found comfort in Debbie's straightforward nature. She was one of the few people he could confide in without fear of judgment. Debbie quickly became a loyal presence in his life, a friend he could rely on when he felt isolated by fame and misunderstood by the world. Their bond only deepened as Michael navigated some of the most challenging years of his career, marked by intense scrutiny and unrelenting rumors. Debbie was there through it all, witnessing firsthand the emotional toll that fame and constant media attention took on him. It was during these difficult years that Michael began to consider the possibility of having children. He longed for a family of his own, a chance to experience the love and connection he often felt was missing in his life. And in Debbie, he found someone he trusted enough to share that dream with. When Michael expressed his desire to become a father, Debbie made a decision that surprised many. She offered to help him fulfill that dream, not out of obligation or romantic attachment, but out of genuine love and loyalty to her friend. To her, this wasn't about marriage or traditional family roles. It was about helping Michael find happiness and stability in a world that often left him feeling alone. Their marriage, which came soon after, was unconventional by most standards. Debbie herself has described it as a relationship built on friendship, trust, and mutual support rather than the traditional ideals of romance. This unconventional arrangement raised eyebrows in the public eye, away, and their marriage became a source of speculation and rumor. Many questioned Debbie's motives, and some even accused her of being involved for financial gain. But Debbie insists that her intentions were pure. She wanted to provide Michael with the family he longed for, a family that could bring him the peace he sought. As she reveals more about their relationship, she hints that her loyalty to Michael ran deeper than most people understood. To Debbie, helping Michael build a family was her way of giving back to a friend who had shown her trust and kindness. Debbie's reflections on those early years shed light on a bond that was far more complex than the media ever portrayed. She wasn't just Michael's wife, she was his confidant, his anchor, someone he could turn to when the pressures of his life became too much. And as she shares her story now, Debbie is ready to reveal the truth about their relationship, a truth that challenges the narratives and rumors that have followed them for years. As Debbie Rowe opens up about her time with Michael Jackson, she addresses one of the most sensitive and controversial aspects of his life, the allegations and accusations that followed him for years. For Debbie, watching Michael face these accusations was deeply painful. She had witnessed the toll they took on him, physically, mentally, and emotionally. The man she knew was compassionate, gentle, and caring, a far cry from the disturbing narratives the public was led to believe. For her, the accusations were not only shocking, but also felt like a gross distortion of the man she saw behind closed doors. Debbie recalls the emotional impact these accusations had on Michael. Behind his calm and collected public facade, he was devastated, constantly questioning why the world seemed so eager to believe the worst about him. According to Debbie, these moments of vulnerability revealed a man who was deeply affected by the weight of public perception, struggling to reconcile the loving father and friend he was in private with the dark image that was portrayed in the media. She describes how the accusations haunted him, often leaving him feeling isolated and misunderstood. But Debbie's perspective on these accusations goes beyond just empathy for Michael's suffering. She's hinted that many people failed to see the broader picture. Michael was a target, an easy mark for those looking to exploit his fame. With his childlike innocence and immense wealth, he was constantly surrounded by people whose intentions weren't always pure. Debbie suggests that these accusations were, in part, a reflection of how some individuals around him sought to take advantage of his generosity and kindness. Michael trusted easily, perhaps too easily, and in doing so, opened himself up to people who didn't have his best interests at heart. Debbie is also clear about the frustration she felt watching the media frenzy unfold, knowing that the world was quick to judge Michael without understanding his true character. She recalls moments when she felt helpless, wanting to protect him from the relentless scrutiny, but realizing that her support was limited in the face of such overwhelming public pressure. To Debbie, it was heartbreaking to see a man she cared for deeply be vilified by people who never knew him personally. She believes that if the world had seen the Michael she knew, the gentle, empathetic soul who was always looking out for others, these accusations might have been viewed in a very different light. As Debbie speaks out now, she aims to clarify the impact these accusations had on Michael and to offer her perspective on the man he really was. She hopes that by sharing her story, people will begin to understand the toll these controversies took on him and perhaps see beyond the sensational headlines. To Debbie, Michael was more than the allegations and media portrayals. He was a man who faced unimaginable challenges with a strength and resilience that few could truly comprehend. And through her words, she hopes to give the world a glimpse of the real Michael Jackson, a man who was as vulnerable as he was iconic. Debbie Rowe's story also offers a deeply personal look into how fame took a relentless toll on Michael Jackson. From her perspective, Michael wasn't just navigating the pressures of celebrity, he was battling an unending storm of expectations, demands, and scrutiny that seemed to grow heavier with each passing year. Debbie recalls how behind the scenes, Michael was profoundly affected by the overwhelming fame he had achieved. While the world saw a larger-than-life star, Debbie saw a man who was often exhausted, emotionally drained, and searching for moments of peace in a life that rarely offered him any. One of the things that struck Debbie most was Michael's intense desire to live up to the image his fans had of him. He was always striving for perfection, driven by the fear of disappointing those who looked up to him. Debbie describes him as someone who was willing to go to extraordinary lengths to give his fans what they wanted, sometimes at the expense of his own well-being. The countless hours he spent rehearsing, performing, and pushing himself to his limits were all part of his commitment to his craft, but Debbie knew it was taking a serious toll on him. The constant media attention added yet another layer of pressure. Debbie remembers times when Michael felt he could never escape the watchful eyes of the press, who scrutinized his every move, twisted his words, and fed the public's insatiable curiosity about his life. Even in his quietest moments, he seemed haunted by the knowledge that the world was waiting for him to slip up, to reveal something that could be sensationalized. compromised. For Michael, privacy was a rare luxury, and Debbie witnessed how the lack of it affected his mental health. She describes a man who longed for a life beyond the spotlight, who cherished moments away from the cameras where he could just be himself. Debbie shares that the demands of fame left Michael constantly torn between his public persona and his private self. While he loved his fans and wanted to give them everything he could, he also struggled with the weight of his own vulnerability, a side of him he rarely showed. There were times, Debbie recalls, when Michael seemed to retreat into himself, a way of coping with the intense pressure he was under. She remembers moments where he would sit quietly, lost in thought, as if trying to reconcile the man the world saw with the person he felt he truly was. For Debbie, watching Michael endure these pressures was both heartbreaking and revealing. She saw a man who, despite all the success and adoration, was constantly at odds with the world's expectations of him. He was a sensitive soul in an unforgiving industry, and his fame had become a double-edged sword that offered him both immense joy and deep sadness. Through her eyes, we see the full impact of fame on Michael Jackson, a man who was willing to sacrifice everything for his art, but who paid a heavy price in the process. Debbie's reflections paint a picture of someone who was as much a victim of his own success as he was a beneficiary of it. Someone who, beneath the glittering facade, carried burdens that few could truly understand. Debbie Rowe's perspective on her role as the mother to Michael Jackson's children is one of the most complex and controversial aspects of her story. From the beginning, their arrangement raised eyebrows and invited speculation. To the world, it seemed unusual, a marriage born not out of traditional romance, but from a unique partnership and mutual trust. Debbie has often said that her relationship with Michael was built on friendship, respect, and a deep understanding of his desire to be a father. When he shared his wish to have children, Debbie saw an opportunity to help him fulfill a lifelong dream. Becoming the mother of Michael's children was a decision Debbie made with full knowledge of how unconventional it would appear to the outside world, but as she reveals, it was a choice driven by love and loyalty rather than personal ambition. For Debbie, it was about giving Michael a chance to experience the family he longed for, a source of stability and joy in a life that was otherwise tumultuous and chaotic. She viewed it as her way of supporting him, of being there for a friend who had shown her trust and kindness over the years. However, this choice came with sacrifices, ones that Debbie admits were difficult but necessary for the well-being of the family. After her separation from Michael, Debbie's role in her children's lives was limited, a decision she says was made with their best interests in mind. She trusted that Michael would provide them with a loving and supportive environment, and she believed that stepping back was a way to protect them from the public scrutiny that followed her and Michael's every move. It was a controversial decision, one that invited harsh criticism, but Debbie stands by her choice, expressing that she wanted to give her children the chance to grow up with as much normalcy as possible. Debbie's reflections on her role as a mother reveal a side of the story that few understood at the time. While the media painted her as distant or uninvolved, Debbie describes herself as a mother who made difficult choices in the hope that they would ultimately benefit her children. She knew that being close to Michael's world meant subjecting their family to an intense spotlight, and she wanted to shield them from that as much as possible. Her decision to step back was rooted in a belief that this would provide them with a more stable environment, one that wouldn't be overshadowed by the constant rumors and controversies surrounding Michael. Through Debbie's words, we see a mother who cared deeply for her children, even if her choices were unconventional. She speaks with honesty about the sacrifices she made and the trust she placed in Michael to create a loving home for their kids. For Debbie, her story isn't about regret, but about doing what she believed was best for her children and honoring the unique bond she shared with Michael. Her decision was never about walking away. It was about supporting Michael's vision of family in a way that protected their children from the chaos that surrounded their father. In Debbie's eyes, her role may not have been traditional, but it was driven by love, loyalty, and a commitment to giving her children a life free from the pressures and scrutiny that haunted Michael's own childhood. Debbie Rowe's reflections on Michael Jackson's relationships with others reveal another layer of the isolation and mistrust that haunted his life. From her vantage point, she witnessed the complexity of Michael's interactions with those around him, friends, associates, and even family members. As someone who was part of his inner circle, Debbie saw how Michael's intense fame created a world where genuine trust was a rare commodity. Over the years, Michael became more guarded, often questioning the motives of the people who entered his life. Debbie describes a man who was both intensely loyal, yet hesitant to let anyone too close, constantly wary of the risks that came with misplaced trust. Debbie recalls how Michael's life was a revolving door of people, many of whom wanted something from him, whether it was fame, fortune, or simply the thrill of being became close to a legend. For Michael, it became exhausting to navigate these relationships, and Debbie saw firsthand how he gradually built walls around himself. She describes him as someone who craved meaningful connections, but who had learned, often painfully, that trust was something he couldn't afford to give freely. Debbie's insights paint a picture of a man who longed for companionship, but was repeatedly reminded of the dangers that came with his level of fame. In their private conversations, Michael confided in Debbie about his struggles with trust. He shared his disappointments and the betrayals that had scarred him, leaving him cautious, even around those he cared for deeply. Debbie recalls that even with those he considered friends, there was always a sense of distance, a guardedness that protected him from further heartbreak. As someone who witnessed these challenges firsthand, Debbie understood why Michael felt the need to isolate himself. She believes that his life experiences had taught him to always be on guard, to look for hidden motives, and to keep his vulnerabilities hidden. According to Debbie, Michael's guarded nature wasn't about arrogance or elitism. It was about self-preservation. In a world where everyone seemed to want something from him, protecting his heart and his trust became essential for his own survival. Debbie hints that this constant vigilance took a toll on him, creating a sense of loneliness that he could never quite shake. She recalls moments when Michael would confide in her about his fears and anxieties, the weight of carrying a legacy that was both celebrated and scrutinized by millions. In those moments, Debbie saw a man who felt isolated even in a crowd, a man who had come to see trust as a luxury he couldn't afford. Through Debbie's perspective, we gain insight into Michael's complicated relationship with trust and connection. While the world saw a superstar with an entourage, Debbie saw a man who, despite his fame, felt alone, a man who found it increasingly difficult to open his heart to others. For her, Michael's life was a paradox, surrounded by people yet profoundly isolated, loved by millions but unsure who he could truly rely on. And as she speaks out now, Debbie reveals a side of Michael that the public rarely saw, a man burdened by the weight of his own fame, forever cautious, and always protecting a heart that had been broken too many times. In reflecting on Michael Jackson's life, Debbie Rowe sheds light on the profound disconnect between who he truly was and how he was portrayed by the media. According to Debbie, the Michael she knew was vastly different from the image crafted by sensational headlines and tabloid stories. The world often saw Michael as a mysterious, eccentric figure with rumors and misconceptions clouding the reality of his character. But Debbie describes a man who was genuine, kind-hearted, and deeply compassionate, a person who was more grounded than many could imagine. For her, the media's portrayal was a gross oversimplification, a distortion that missed the essence of the man she knew so well. Debbie recalls how deeply hurt Michael was by the constant misrepresentation. Despite his fame, he remained sensitive to how he was perceived, and the relentless stream of negative press took a toll on him. Michael felt as though he could never escape the media's scrutiny, that his every action would be twisted into something unrecognizable. According to Debbie, he would often confide in her about how much he wished the world could see the real him, not the character that the tabloids had created. He longed to be understood for who he truly was, but it seemed the harder he tried, the more elusive that understanding became. Debbie observed how this constant media distortion led Michael to retreat further into himself, becoming more private and reclusive. In a way, it became a vicious cycle. The more the media sensationalized his life, the more Michael felt the need to protect his privacy, which only fueled further speculation. Debbie believes that the media's relentless portrayal of Michael as an enigma or strange individual left him feeling deeply misunderstood and isolated. She describes moments where Michael, heartbroken by the headlines, would question why he was treated this way, wondering what he had done to deserve such harsh judgment. Debbie is also quick to point out that Michael's quirks and eccentricities, the very things that made him so unique, were often used against him. Where fans saw his creativity and childlike wonder, the media saw something to exploit. Debbie knew Michael as someone who embraced his differences, who found joy in living life in his own way, away from conventional norms. But she also saw the frustration he felt when these qualities were misconstrued, turned into something strange or unwholesome. For Michael, his individuality was a source of pride, yet it became one of the main reasons he was misrepresented in the public eye. In sharing these reflections, Debbie hopes to dispel some of the myths that have lingered around Michael's legacy. She wants wants people to understand that the real Michael was a man of depth and sincerity, someone who cared deeply for others and felt the weight of the world's judgments keenly. To her, his story is a cautionary tale about the dangers of judging someone based on surface impressions or sensationalized narratives. Through her words, Debbie aims to reveal the truth that Michael Jackson was not the strange, elusive figure the media made him out to be, but a thoughtful, compassionate soul who struggled under the weight of a public that never fully understood him. As Debbie Rowe brings her reflections to a close, she leaves us with a powerful reminder of the legacy Michael Jackson truly left behind, a legacy that goes far beyond his music, his fame, or the controversies that followed him. For Debbie, Michael's story is about resilience, kindness, and a relentless drive to bring joy to others, even when his own life was marked by challenges and heartbreak. She believes that at his core, Michael was a man who wanted to make a difference, not just in the world of entertainment, but in the lives of those he cared about, including his family, friends, and fans. Debbie emphasizes that Michael's generosity and compassion were among his most defining qualities, traits that were often overshadowed by the media's obsession with his personal life. She recalls the countless times he went out of his way to help others, whether it was through his philanthropic efforts, his kindness toward fans, or his quiet support for friends and colleagues. Michael was always willing to give, often at a personal cost, and Debbie believes that this is the side of him the world should remember. His legacy, she insists, isn't just his record-breaking albums or iconic dance moves. It's the lasting impact he had on the people around him, the lives he touched with his empathy and understanding. Through her story, Debbie hopes to paint a fuller picture of Michael Jackson, one that goes beyond the misconceptions and rumors. She wants fans to know that he was more than a superstar. He was a deeply caring and complex individual who faced immense pressures but still found the strength to share his light with the world. She hopes her words will encourage people to look past the headlines and see the human being behind the legend, a man who, despite everything, continued to give his all for those he loved. In sharing these intimate details, Debbie leaves us with a question. How would we remember Michael if we knew him as she did? Would we see him differently if we understood the kindness he showed, the struggles he endured, and the sacrifices he made? As Debbie reflects on his life, she feels a deep sense of gratitude for the time they shared, and she hopes that by revealing the real Michael Jackson, she can help his legacy shine even brighter. For Debbie, Michael's story is a reminder that even the brightest stars have shadows, but it's their light that leaves the lasting impression. She urges fans and the world alike to honor Michael's memory by embracing the man he was, the generous friend, the devoted father, the legendary artist, and the compassionate soul who dedicated his life to spreading love and happiness. In the end, Debbie's words reveal a truth she hopes will resonate, that Michael Jackson's legacy is not defined by his fame alone, but by the love and humanity he brought to those around him.